At $200, a Super Nintendo setup costs twice as much as the old system. For the money, the company promises better pictures, sound, and adventure. Now you're playing with power, superpower. You're the king, I tell you! The king!
Only for Super NES.
Only on Super NES.
You're listening to the SNES podcast with your host, Soulblazer.
Hello, everybody. This is the Super NES podcast, episode number 254. These are your hosts. I'm Greg. He is Joe.
Hello. Are you ready for this?
Yes.
Sorry.
No, it's okay because we're definitely because no, it's actually like a very appropriate tie-in because this is one of two games that Activision published in this time period, in which they were trying to spice up a shooter because, as we talked about before, shooters always need like great music. Yep. So we're looking at the 1993 Super NES shooter BioMetal on this episode, which is one of two games that Activision released that year, which actually featured like licensed music, like a known band. So. Joe, you probably do not know the other game. This is good. This is good trivia. Trivia question for you.
I do not know the other game.
Yeah. It is also a shooter called Excalibur 2097.
Huh. Okay.
So, but anyway, so BioMetal itself is just a basic run-of-the-mill horizontal scrolling shooter game. The name actually ties into kind of the main antagonist, like the enemy. So kudos to them for at least like making the title somewhat relevant to the game, which is not the case in many cases. So the game was developed by Athena, who we have covered before like this podcast. They're the company that made Super Bowling for the Super NES. So. Many of their games did not come out in the West. Only a few of their games did, but this and Super Bowling were two of the games that they developed that did come out over here in the West. So, and the game was published by Activision outside of Japan. So, came out in Japan March 1993. Europe got the game next June in 1993, and for some reason the North American market was last, coming out in November of 1993. So. The title BioMetal, as I alluded to, makes reference to the plot of the game. It's a very silly, kind of abstract, very far outstanding plot, which hopes you through some animation, through some scrolling text and a couple look at the graphics at the start of the game. So you really don't need to pay too much attention to it.
Yeah.
Just basically know that the BioMetal are your antagonist, and your antagonist, like you're in a ship to take him down. The Halberd is the name of the ship, which actually has a crew of two, which is also a bit unusual for a shooter of this type. Usually ships like a single ship, but there's a reason for it. The pilot, Kid Ray, and the biologist Anita are actually references, tongue-in-cheek namesakes of the two lead singers for the group that Athena and Activision licensed the music from. To make this game from. So, the group they picked was Two Unlimited, which is a Belgian Dutch dance group, which actually has been like a lot of musical groups. They've gone through a lot of on again, off again periods, like their life. So, they were active originally from 1991 to 1996. Then again from 1998 to 1999. Then again 2001, 2006, and then again 2012 to like the present. So they definitely have gone through a bunch of rebrands over the years.
Yeah.
I was surprised to learn that they're still active. I have not heard of this group per se. I have not purposely listened, listened like their songs. I don't know, so I'm not sure that you have, Joe, but
so I'm just gonna get right into this. So firing this game up and getting hit with "Ready for This," which is the track used for the first level of the game,
and also the title screen.
Yep, and the title screen. Sorry.
Yep.
Immediately, I started laughing because it's it's techno, which was getting big at the time. Dance.
Yep.
Especially European techno dance was starting to become popular, and this is like a staple, especially like 90s hockey. This you got what's that? Snap. I got the power.
Everybody used this song in the 90s.
Oh my god.
90s,
so it was used so much, especially like in a sports setting that
you've
like
definitely heard it. Like if you don't even know like where it's from.
I was definitely taken back a bit when I heard it because I was like, am I playing the right game?
Somebody made a joke actually with like a review on YouTube being like, no, you've not fired up a copy of Space Jam that was mislabeled by accident.
Right,
it's actually
right.
the correct game. So, but
I mean, this thing was all over the place for sure, and it, like I said, it was strictly like sports stuff. So that
it's still used a little bit today. You still hear it occasionally every now and then. So it hasn't totally dropped out of dropped out of parlance. But yes, during the 90s and early 2000s, it definitely was very heavily used.
Yes.
So. This definitely brings back memories, like for nothing else. So, so Activision decided to license four of their songs, like in their debut album, 1991's album, Get Ready, to use for this game. The other three songs, which they licensed, which appear in this game, are Twilight Zone, Tribal Dance, and Delight. Which you also hear remixes, the remix of those songs like this game.
Yeah.
So, for some reason, I assume for licensing reasons, their music only appears in the European and North American version of the game. The Japanese version of the game uses a totally different and original soundtrack.
So, I don't know what the reasoning was. My thought was
music licensing, probably. If I had to guess,
that would be
music licensing is very complicated.
So that was one of the things I thought of. The second thing was like, I don't know if you played the Japanese version, but
I didn't.
The soundtrack is okay, but it's like it gets lost. It's not something that's going to stay with you. It's definitely one of those where we would talk about the game and be like, a low point is the soundtrack because, it's serviceable, but like it's just, you don't remember it. And I think that might have been the issue where like Activision kind of like heard it and was like, cool game, cool concept, but we got to do something about that music and kind of shoehorned, 2 Unlimited into it. I could be wrong. But it makes sense.
No, I think you're probably right. That's how it happened. Yeah, because but anyway. So as far as the shooter itself, it's a pretty basic, competent shooter. Chances are you played games like this before. It's a 6-stage, totally horizontal shooting, the shooting game, with parallax scrolling going on in the background in the stages. You fight off waves of enemies. You get power-ups, you fight a boss at the end. The power-up system's kind of similar to how the power system's kind of similar to how it works like the riding games. The pods, which release would drop from enemies, cycle between different weapons. So if you want to grab at the time that you most want to pick your weapon, some weapons cancel each other out. Other weapons complement each other. You also have a shield that you can also activate. That would engage it, or 4 spinning orbs the circle around you, and charge power is drained when the shield's active. You can see the charge gauge on the bottom of the screen that you play. Not my favorite power system in the game, but it works. You get the hang of it after a while. So I played this game back in the day, so I knew what to expect from this. Joe, I believe this was I believe you said this was your first time playing this game, because this game only came out on the Super NES. There's not the game there's not a game that got ported to other systems as most shooters did this time period. So I'm curious to hear your impressions.
Okay, so I just want to recap the story and how we got started here because I had to write this down because when I saw the intro, which I think is done well with the scrolling text and the little still pictures they give you.
Yep.
But this is crazy. So, a war has basically drained natural resources on Earth, so we set out to pillage an alien planet. These half-man, half-animal aliens, also known as biometals or BMs, they refer them as BMs. They throw out the whole biometal thing like right away. They're just like, yeah, they're BMs. So this planet needs to be destroyed in 32 hours because basically conspiracy theories. Apparently, this previously unknown race of aliens will take control of the Milky Way if we don't destroy them in 32 hours. Weird that it's 32 hours, but whatever. So then WASP sends the GAM out with our two pilots, Kid Ray and Anita. Like, we're the enemy. Like, that's the first thing I thought of when I started playing. Like, we're the enemy. We're just going to this alien planet to steal their resources. They're trying to basically defend themselves. And now, because they tried to defend themselves and want to aggressively come back at us, we're like, you know what? We're just going to destroy your planet. It's wild. Anyways, so I thought it was an interesting mechanic here. So, and I focused a lot of my review stuff with the GAM charge, which is your shield, because I found that to be really useful and satisfying, like the way it can be used. So, it can start as like a shield, so you just have the blue balls revolving around your ship, it'll block bullets, whatever. But then with, I think it was the Y button, it can expand out, and it can go like the entire stretch of the screen, which is pretty cool, so it's a good way to clear out some ships and block stuff and whatnot. And then, excuse me, there's also with the, I believe it was the right trigger, you can do like a GAM smash, which basically just sends it in front of you, and you can, or up or down, and, hit the enemies with it. That's really helpful with bosses. What's also cool is, as you can throw this thing around, you can also cancel it. So you can either have it go the stretch of the entire screen, or you can, have it just go a short distance, block bullets as you need, and it really adds a layer of strategy that I wasn't expecting going into this, because it's a shooter. I expected I'm going to shoot things, and things are going to blow up. I'm going to collect pods, level up my weaponry, and just kind of go. But the more I played, and the more I figured out like how the GAM shield worked, it opened up a new way of my mind thinking while I was playing the game. It was pretty interesting. The first 4 levels are pretty good, which, by the way, I just want to give a little more detail. You have 5 lives and 4 continues to finish 6 levels, and that sounds like enough, and I most certainly thought that was enough, and there are checkpoints, so praise to them for having checkpoints. The difficulty spikes on the last 2 levels.
This is a good point to mention that you can change the difficulty level in the option screen. You can have like either easy, normal, or hard, as well as also change the mapping of the controls on the controller and whatnot. Pretty standard controls I would like for this. As well as the list the music of the game if you want to as well, because it is pretty well done. But anyway, but yeah, I agree. Even on easy, this is a hard game. So I don't think this is the hardest shooter I've ever played. There definitely are bullet hells like Ikaruga, I think, that are worse than this game is. But I think it probably is the hardest shooter I've played on the Super NES so far, like the podcast. It's definitely a very hard game.
Yeah, I mean, I got through level 1 through 4, obviously, with no issue. I absolutely love the boss designs. The boss designs alone gave me major Contra vibes, which I was digging. and that's the other thing. Kind of jumping ahead, but we'll touch on it. Graphics here for the backgrounds, the parallax scrolling is so smooth. And I think for most of the levels, it's really good. The first level took some time to kind of get used to because the way the gray background is almost like the same color as you and the ships that you're attacking. So it kind of all blends together a little bit, and it can cause some motion sickness. At least it did for me for a little bit. So that was the only downfall that I came across, at least as far as that level is concerned. But the rest of it, I thoroughly enjoyed.
Yeah, so I'll add on to that. I definitely agree with you 100%. 100% like on that. The graphics of this game are very good. I don't think the colors used are the best, and but I don't think the backgrounds are the most exciting. There definitely are better visually looking shooter games in the system for sure. But having said that, the enemy design, as you said, is pretty good. It's not very varied or mixed. You do see a lot of the same basic types over and over and over again. But the bosses are very good, as you mentioned. They are very large, detailed, whatever. The parallax scrolling in this game is beautiful. Athena definitely knew how to. Athena, the developers, they definitely knew how to develop games for the system because there's a lot going on in some stages. But everything's achieved with not even a hint of flicker or slowdown or any kind of graphical problems at all. The game, the game flows very smooth, even when a lot of stuff's been thrown all at you at once, which is very impressive. So so graphically, maybe not the best in the world, but programming wise, it's very beautifully programmed, very well executed, on that front.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, I breezed through the first 4 levels, as you'd expect with a shooter. 5th level, like I said, got a little bit more difficult, and the boss was definitely a little more difficult than the previous 4, but nothing compares to that last boss. Oh my god. I threw everything I could at him, and that's where I really lost the majority of my lives, and I think I continued twice. So yeah, he definitely was, final boss is impressive.
Yes.
Graphically, the size, everything, like Greg was saying, no slowdown. I was marveled for sure. That being said, 100%, this is your run-of-the-mill shooter. If you don't know what BioMetal is getting into it, honestly, R-Type, Gradius, Raiden, even though I don't think Raiden came out on the Super NES, but any of those
at least
games.
one of them did.
Okay. So I mean, any of those other shooters, I would recommend before this, but this is not a horrible game, and that's one thing I definitely want to stress. It's different enough, but yet not enough to make a difference.
Yeah, no, I definitely would agree with all that, for sure. So, and it's not it's not a particularly long game. It's about a half an hour long to play through.
Yeah,
which is, which is typical of shooters. But, so it's I'm okay with this game being not graphically the best, if it means you can have silky smooth programming and just very stable gameplay, because again, there are a bunch of earlier shooters Gradius and R-Type that don't flow anywhere near as smooth as this one does. So the programmers being able to do for mid to early history history game 1993 is still somewhat early with the system, but for them to be able to do that, they're very impressive for sure. So and the end boss reminds me also the end boss also reminds me of R-Type. It also reminds me about a certain R-Type final boss as well too. Definitely a lot of inspiration taken from R-Type, taken from Raiden, that kind of stuff. We talked about the music earlier, earlier bit to open up the podcast because honestly it's very hard not to. But The game uses remixes of the four songs. Well, four of the songs like from their album.
Yeah.
There's a there's a little bit of original music, not too much. Even the boss theme seemed like it sound like remixes.
Yep.
Some of the songs. So and as I said before, shooter depends upon having good music. And this is. Whether or not this music is your cup of tea depends upon your taste. But as far as the songs themselves go, they're converted very well to 16-bit. They sound great in this format. You definitely recognize what they are for sure. They still have that very hard techno beat that you would expect. From songs like in this group.
Yep.
The music's very well done. It's a very good soundtrack. Like I said, whether or not you enjoy playing it is a different story. But it depends on your taste. But I think as far as they want it, obviously they're trying to drive sales, have some recognition on here because even the box had a sticker saying basically advertising the soundtrack, like on the game. So obviously they're trying to drive sales. How it worked, I don't know. We'll talk about reviews and eBay later on, but anyway, the conversions sound very good. Overall, I think it's a very good soundtrack to play by. The sound effects also are very well done as well.
Yeah. Sound effects are great. And absolutely. I mean, the whole time I'm sitting there waiting for that whole, are you ready for this? And then I was just waiting for it. But then I'm like, it's Super Nintendo. Oh my God, if they had done speech samples or literally just compressed the album song into the game, I can only imagine, one, how big that cart would have had to be, and two, how muffled that would have sounded, or I should say distorted. But yeah, thank God they didn't go that route. And I do think that these remixes are done very well. Like I said, it fits what you're doing in the game. It fits great. It keeps you engaged. It makes you want to keep going through and getting, to the end of the game. And this is one of those games, you are going to have to remember patterns. You're going to have to, there's trial and error. So, I can sit there and, hang my hat on the fact that I actually did pretty good with this game. But honestly, I personally think that if I hadn't played other shooters on the Super NES before, or really if I hadn't played any shooters at all, I would have probably struggled with this game. It kind of had that Castlevania vibe where you need to memorize what's going on, die, and then come back and use that memory to be able to proceed forward. But it's done in a really good way. So, it's got the check mark from me. It's definitely passable. Yeah.
So we technically, so this is probably a good. Yes, this is probably a good time as any to mention. The difficulty of this game is very high. Like I said, I think this is a very high, high difficulty shooter. So, even on easy, it's not that
easy.
Easy of a game. Thank you.
Yeah.
I was trying to think of a more creative way to say it, but but perhaps simplest sometimes works. But anyway, overall, I think this game is very solid. The music certainly adds a lot to it. If the soundtrack was not here, i.e., if they'd used the Japanese original soundtrack on here, it would have been a fine shooter, probably forgettable. The music does elevate the game a little bit above. So, I would say basically that if you're a fan of shooters, you want a challenge, by all means check this out because this is not the most popular game. When I could tell, even with the licensed music being on here, the game didn't sell that great based upon prices. So, and the reviews were only average, which we'll get here in a moment. So, there's nothing really to scream originality with this game. It's a very derivative basic. Some might even say bare bones shooter as far as the game can go. It's not. There's nothing new here. We've seen everything. We've seen everything before. It's pretty. It's pretty forgettable. By the rails shooter for the most part, except for the music. Again, the music. If you're a fan of that, you're a fan of that type of music. The music in this game does help elevate it some definitely, and sets it apart. So basically, it's like if you are a fan of shooters and don't mind it being, and don't mind shooters like being kind of a derivative. But one a very hard and pretty to look at shooter that's programmed very well. By all means, check this out. But if you don't want that, there are better shooters available in the system. There are better shooters available. Period. And like I said, this game's a challenge. It definitely is. My experience, like very similar to Joe. Like the last two stages is where is where a very hard game definitely cranks up a notch. Yep. So, So just. I think nowadays a lot of people have forgotten about this game. It has not been re-released anywhere as far as I can tell. Again, probably because licensing issues. If they were to re-release it, I'm sure they have to use the Japanese soundtrack and not the actual musical songs that this game used. But anyway, so if you're a fan of obscure hard shooters, by all means check this one out. Otherwise, do yourself a favor, stick to like easier shooters, because this one definitely would be a challenge for somebody who's not used to or who does not play this type of genre, for a while. But anyway, like I said before, I do want to give kudos to how well the game's programmed, because definitely it's one of the most well-programmed games in the system I've played. The fact that you can have so much on the screen at once and so much stuff being thrown at you for a somewhat early 1993 game without even like a hint of flicker or slowdown is very impressive. So I do want to just really just shout that out. The fact that I am very impressed by how well the game is programmed. But anyway, a competent derivative, not original, but still like fun shooter, a fun shooter to play, like enjoy like hard games.
Yeah, and I just want to add one little thing, because I don't know if you made note of it or not, but there is apparently, and I use the word apparently with quotations.
A sequel, yeah.
Well, no, not the sequel. There is a level skip code, which I would have made note of and included here. And I know you usually do,
I got it, yeah. It's actually like very simple.
I couldn't get it to work.
I mentioned that. It's a very simple like skip code.
Yeah.
During the game, you just use up, left, A and B like reset. Then you can hold select and push R to get to the next stage.
Did you actually get it to work?
Yeah, it works.
Okay. Yeah, I couldn't get the thing to work, so I don't know. Maybe my fingers don't operate the way they should. I don't know. But yeah, I couldn't get it to work, so I didn't even make note of it. I just, I wanted to make sure I mentioned it, because I couldn't get it to work, but I figured you usually have the pulse on those things, so.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, but as I mentioned before, there was a Japanese-only sequel to this game made called BioMetal Gus, which came out with the Sega Saturn in 1997.
Oh, okay.
From what I can see online, it looks pretty much the same vein as this game is. So,
I'm gonna have to check that out.
So, but anyway, So, as mentioned before, reviews for this game were pretty average. It's not a lot of magazines covered the game back in the day. Famitsu, the Japanese one, gave it 22 out of 40. Joypad over here in the West gave it 76 out of 100. So average scores, which I think is is fair, because like I said before, there's nothing really exciting about this game. It's just it's the music and the very well programmed, smooth as silk playing graphics that really make this game stand out, I think. So the average reviews, I might give it a few more points higher on that scale, but average a good sounds about right for me as far as the overall impression of the game goes. Yeah. And as I mentioned before, the game seems like it's so somewhat well. It's hard to say exactly how much. I don't feel like it's sold great because the game prices are pretty average for Super NES prices, at least by cart. CIV copies of the game are very expensive, which is another reason why I think the game didn't sell particularly great. But you can find it on eBay. 27 copies were listed as to be doing research. 19 copies of the game had recently sold. As usual, these prices include shipping from North America only. Like I said before, cart-only prices are about average, I'd say, quote-unquote, average Super NES prices. They've sold anywhere from $30 to $62. So, I mean, not outrageous if you are a fan of shooters and want to, to add to your collection. So, CIB though, I only found one copy of CIB which sold recently, and that sold for a whopping $349. So, this definitely is a much harder game to find complete. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, so, like I said, I played this game back in the day, enjoyed it then. I think it's fine now. Being a shooter, the game's aged fine. Shooters are usually one genre that plays pretty much the same now as it did 30 years ago. Yeah. So that's not really an issue like for these. So just like, very challenging, but still like a pretty fun shooter to play. If you enjoy like a hard shooter for sure, and definitely, hearing those songs done so well in 16-bit formats, I was like, definitely, she definitely was checking out and nothing else.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, shorter episode this time around because shooters usually don't have too much meat to them. Do you have anything else you want to say about this game for final thoughts or anything else, Joe?
No, I really don't. I think we've covered it pretty well, and I will say that this gets a thumbs up from me, and usually when we've talked about shooters, we've talked pretty positive about them for the most part, and I am a guy who likes my shooters, so. If you like shooters, check it out. I think it's worth a playthrough. Even if you don't end up beating it, just playing it for a little bit and getting a feel for it and getting that experience, I think is well worth it. And if you're one of those people like me where it's like, oh, it's a shooter, I know it's only like an hour long at the very most, and you want to sit down and beat it, I think that's acceptable as well. Yeah, for sure. So,
anyway, that's... So anyway, that's the game for this week. BioMetal, as always, appreciate you listening to the podcast. Questions, comments, feedback, etc. can be coming in the Facebook group or also email to me at the SNESpodcast@yahoo.com. Joe, where can I reach you at?
You can find me anywhere on the internet. Also, you can find me on Twitter at JOESUX30. I also have a very public Facebook, obviously not family friendly. You should know that by now. And I also do the Radical Retro Roundup, which is also not family friendly. And I should be actually recording that tomorrow. So George has finally moved into his new place. Seems pretty ready to go and in better spirits than he was a while ago. So. And also, I think there's going to be a change with the Radical Retro Roundup. I think we're going to move to a bi-monthly release schedule, and maybe take on some meatier games. I haven't decided yet, but it's being kicked around.
Yep, sounds good for sure. But okay, as always, we thank everybody for listening to the podcast. Next time, we are covering the sequel we teased about recently. Yep. Since we recently played Dragon, we're going to be Dragon next episode. So we're going to be looking at its pseudo sequel, Dragon View, which is not the same kind of game that Dragon was. This is more of an action RPG game, kind of like Zelda. So hopefully this is more like Joe Zowie as far as the actual gameplay goes.
We shall see.
Yes, we shall see indeed. But, okay, so look forward to that next time, folks. As always, stay safe, be well, and we'll catch you again later. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Nintendo controls 80% of the video market. But no matter how you play the game, or which game you play, things definitely have come a long way since Pac-Man.
Now you're playing with power. Deep power.